Al Millar,
Boggy D.
welcome to the show. Thanks for coming, man.
I don't know about you, but when there's a little timer that just appeared on the screen a second ago,
Yeah,
and I got really nervous all of a sudden, man. So holy crap, I feel like
yeah, it's happening. It's the real deal, man. And
the
listen,
bright lights are on.
everything's on, and now it's official because it's going to be online. You know what? Anything you say online, it's the truth, like you guys
There
were saying.
forever.
Like you guys were saying in your podcast, which I want to, advertise a little bit, the Gray Zone, that you're doing with your buddy, and anybody who's interested in coaching, shenanigans, like development, and just really like smart thoughts, like jokes aside, subscribe to Al's podcast, the Gray Zone, on Spotify. Where are you guys else at?
I think Spotify. I think anywhere you can find
any
podcasts.
podcast platform. So go check them out, guys. And Al,
Bogdan,
again,
that's by far
yeah.
the nicest thing you've ever said about me. So I appreciate that, man. Thanks.
Now I have to re-listen and find out which part exactly. but listen, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so I was just gonna ask, what is there a name of your pod? Because I know like Zach and I spent a lot of time on the Gray Zone, and Zach's taking credit for the name, which is utter bullshit because I came up with the name. But is there like when I watched your episode with Chris, you were like, "Welcome to the show," and I was like, "Oh man, that's official! Welcome to the show."
But what is the name of the show?
Yeah,
there is no name of the show. Like before, I did this kind of stuff a couple of years back when I had Dean, Carol Zhao and Rob Stackley. It was no strings attached show. So I had like no strings. I have like a plaque.
Oh, damn, okay.
From that show back in the day.
Great.
But right now it's just like it goes under my name on YouTube, and there's nothing fancy to it. It's just like a bunch of interviews, like there's nothing,
Gotcha. Okay.
like, yeah, just Bogdan Grigorenko or Bogdan, whatever. It's
Okay.
just...
For my own process, I'm still going to refer to it as the no strings attached because I think that sounds dope. I think that sounds great. So.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah.
So listen, I was very excited to get you on this show because to me, you are one of those coaches, again, like one of a kind, but you're very curious. You're always constantly seeking for answers, like seeking for, not for the way, but for like what if we do this? What if we do that? Even like this morning, I checked your Instagram account and you posted like a bunch of statistics from Junior Orange Bowl, like boys 12, girls 12, like 14s. So, and like you're a huge fan of statistics and all of that, and we'll get deeper into that. But again, you bring in so much knowledge because you're curious by nature and you accumulate that knowledge, and that's why I was like so excited to have you. And of course, you're the owner of Supreme Court, which is a very successful academy in Toronto, and we'll talk about that as well. But yeah, again, that's
great intro.
Yeah,
you nailed it. And
listen,
for your listeners, if you like an hour-long conversation about statistics, get ready because here we go.
That's it. Listen, I knew we were gonna get into statistics and all the data. That's why I put the thinking cap on, because I knew like that's the first time I put it on the podcast because I knew it was gonna get data heavy.
Get real.
It's gonna get
Can I jump in
real.
for a quick sec?
Yeah.
So you've been doing such a great job of like interviewing other people, and I went through your YouTube page a little bit.
Yeah.
Have you been interviewed about your story? Like, has somebody interviewed you about your story?
No, not yet.
Dude,
no,
I think like, let's call an audible right here. Let's flip this around because I feel like your story is way more interesting than my story.
Oh, come
and I
on,
would
stop
love
it.
to like, and this is not planned. Like, I'd love to on the spot talk to you about your journey instead.
Okay, but I tell you mine if you tell me yours after.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Okay. So let's start. Okay, so we're on the
yeah.
No Strings Attached podcast. We just named it with Bogdan
Yeah.
Grigorenko.
Okay, perfect.
So I don't think a lot of people really know like how you got into tennis. Like you have a quick video online talking about, I guess, your journey starting on public courts at
yeah, that's how it started in Canada. Yeah,
in Canada. Right,
Yeah.
right. So we'll stay on the in Canada part a little bit.
Yeah.
The one thing. So where's that park again? Where
it's Trinity Bellwoods, the one
Trinity
and only.
Bellwoods.
Yeah.
So I was laughing when I was watching that because I was like, next time you're a member of the public and you're yelling at the coach teaching next to you, just be careful, man, because in 2 years that guy could be a Team Canada national coach.
You never know. You never know. Exactly. No, listen, it's been a crazy journey, and again, I'm grateful for all the people that I've met along the way and who helped me. But yeah, it started like I came to Canada to study marketing. Like I took my rackets with me because my father was like, well, just take those rackets with you. Just who knows? Just who knows? And at that time, I dropped out of tennis. I never played. I haven't played for like maybe 9 years. And then
Right.
I come to Canada. I try my marketing, advertising thing. Doesn't really work, you know. And then one time I have a huge fight with my girlfriend, like ex-girlfriend at that time, you know, girlfriend at that time. And I was like, man, I have to get out of the apartment. I need to, like, you know, release my steam. And then I take the racket, you know, like I take like some old balls that I had in my bag since like forever. And I go to the public court. At that time it was in Rosedale.
Okay.
So anyway, I go and I hit my first serve in like 10 years. And I was like, man, that feels awesome.
Just crushed it, baby.
Exactly. And I was just like, boom, boom, you know, and I was like, man, I should do this more often. It feels so cool, you know, like to hit a ball, and I miss the feeling. And, you know, I started like reaching out to people like online, like, hey, like, do you want to play? Like looking for hitting, just like to hit, just for fun.
Yeah.
And then I realized, man, I love the game. Like I forgot how I love the game, because for the first time in my life, I was like 25 at that time, 25, 26, I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
I was playing for myself. It wasn't my dad who told me, let's go to practice. It was me, Bogdan, who's like, I want to play. And that was like the best feeling ever. And I was like, maybe I should look into like coaching, because I love the game,
cool.
you know, like, and I started with instructor certification. I never missed a certification for like 8 or 9 years straight. So I would be like instructors. And I was like, man, this is amazing, you know, like what they do with those little kids and how they, you know, put them on the court, and it makes sense. And it's just like how it's just mind blowing. You know, I was like a kid in a candy store. Like I was falling in love with the game again and again, over and over again. And, you know, like instructors, then CP1, you meet like great coaches along the way.
Yeah.
Coach 2, like coach 3, coach 4. So I like every single like new certification that started, I would be in it, because I wanted to learn. Like I didn't care about, I don't have like my papers like I don't anywhere like, you know, anywhere near me, like, but I don't care about the paper. I just wanted to learn. Like I always wanted to learn. My girlfriend is like, why don't you put like this on the wall and that on the wall? You have so many like, it's like it's not about, the second I put it on the wall, I kind of settle.
Yeah.
I stop. In my mind, it's like, that's it. Like you look at it as a like, sort of like achievement, where it's like it is an achievement, but it's like the second I think you put it on the wall, it's like you stop learning. That's in my mind.
Yeah.
You
It's
know?
also funny, you've had two girlfriend references already in 10 minutes. Like, we get it, Bogdan, you're attractive, everybody likes you, we get it. No. But then, okay, so I'm going to come back to you on the certification thing, because I think you and I could have a long conversation just on how much certification meant to both of us.
Yeah.
But you and I have known each other for like a really long time, because I'm sure you remember this, but we met because I was working for Tyler Prescott at NYTA while I was doing my Coach 2.
Yes.
And one day you just showed up.
Yes.
And this is like, I don't think I'm making the story up. Like, as far as I remember you telling me the story, one day you just showed up with a resume, and Tyler essentially like, can you work today? Or
something like that.
Along those lines.
Yeah. So basically I emailed him a bunch of times, and you know, those who know,
good luck.
Who knows Tyler, good luck getting a response from me by email. One time I saw his phone is like 12,000, like 500 emails unanswered. You know, I was
anxiety.
like, okay, that makes sense. But anyway, I just decided to go to the office, you know, like, cause like, man, this guy doesn't respond to me. I'm just going to show up, you know, like, you know, good old Ukrainian way, and talk my way into getting a job.
Yeah.
But anyway, I showed up and say, hey, like, I'm looking for Tyler. Tyler's there. And I'm saying, Tyler, listen, I'm such and such. I work like few months for like Eddie Brisbois, you know, like in the summer. I'm looking for a winter job. He's like, okay, great. Can you start on Wednesday? And I'm like, yes. Okay. Awesome. See ya. And I was like, okay, great. Because I was like, you know, I was preparing like this sales pitch that I never had to do actually. And that's how I started. And that's how I showed up just randomly to one of the practices.
Very cool. And then if you look back on, so then you and I meet, and we were partnering together on two of the more developmental courts, which was a blast. Like I remember that.
I love how you call them developmental courts. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, being really fun.
That's it.
But then if you look back to it, like the team that was at NYTA at the time, it was Tyler was there.
Yes.
Steve Marr was there, who was, I guess, Tyler's right-hand man, who's now
Yeah.
Coach 3, Club Pro 3, and he runs a massive center in the East Coast.
Yes.
Pav Lupic was there, who was a Coach 2 and is now a Coach 3. And you were there, who's now worked at Tennis Canada, done all the stuff you've done, Coach 3, and then I was there as well. So it was like, and I'm sure I'm forgetting, like Kouros was there, who ended up getting ATP points, who was helping coaching, and Radu was there, who's marketed himself really well. So it's interesting, like looking back on just the team at NYTA at the stuff, and
part of the golden age at the NYTA.
Golden age. But what was fun with that is like, because for sure, me, you, and Steve at least, we were really into just like the idea of coaching and wanting to get better as coaches. So I think part of what worked well there was like, I think the three of us just talked a lot about what we think.
Yeah.
And now it didn't really matter if I said something that was incorrect or somebody said something that was incorrect, because like we kind of just worked through stuff together. And I remember that being like a really cool time in our young coaching lives of just getting better together, right?
Yeah, and you know, like that was the time that, looking back, that helped me a lot to continue fuel my my passion, because I was this new guy on the block, you know, like everything that you guys, because you were at that time, like I knew nothing about coaching, like literally nothing, you know, like I was just like coming from my own experience, you know, as a player. And you know, like when you start coaching, you look back and how you were coached, and you kind of try to apply the same thing. So when you guys would say something, and just so you know, like when I was like a junior, I was never taught, at least I don't remember, forget like if any of my coaches listen, and I was like, we could learn that. So I was never taught tactics like the way coaches in Canada are teaching, you know, like coming out of the cross court, when is it good to go down the line? I had zero knowledge on that. Like literally, I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. If you're like closer to the middle, now is the time to go down the line. You know, so everything that you guys said that you were pretty much taught, even like when you were younger, I'm sure, you know, something along those lines, obviously not as maybe advanced, but because everything is progressing, but I was just blown away. And the conversation we had in bars after, like, that was huge.
That's the real learning, man.
That's the real certification right there, you know?
Oh, dude, you beat me to it. You stole my line. That's true. That's true.
It's true.
So we're all working there at NYTA, and we're getting back to the Bogdan Grigorenko story here. Man. And then you end up like working your way through the NYTA ranks really quick, because you have a couple traits that are very, very difficult to find. One is that you generally give a shit. And like, if you have any coach anywhere that just generally gives a shit, don't let them go. The second is you're really inquisitive, and you really want to, very quickly you want to be great. And then I guess the third factor is you're in a situation with Tyler Prescott, who's a really experienced coach, who's done a great job with a lot of national champions, where Ty really likes you. So all of a sudden you wind up in the situation where you've got these three traits and these three things going for you. And I think, and you can jump in anytime now, I think it helps propel you into like the forefront of one of the larger academies in Toronto, and you're in a very visible role in that academy.
Yeah, I mean, we clicked with Tyler because I was very curious, and Tyler is a type of coach, and I think most of us are like that. Like, you know, like the ones who, like, he loves giving back.
Yeah.
Like like he, you know, like he has an ego, you know, like he has a pretty big ego. Like he likes knowing that he's the best, and the fact that I'm inquiring all this information from him just affirms that he's, and he has a reason to believe that, because he is really good coach. He developed many good players. For sure. So like not to like take anything away from Tyler, but I think that played a big role, because like I was, like he had a lesson at 7 a.m. I had to wake up at 5:30 in the morning to take a bus, TTC, to see that lesson. I would arrive like 6:45, you know, to see players warm up, like physically, like what the hell are you supposed to do before tennis lesson? Yeah. And then I would watch his lesson 7 to 8, sometimes 8 to 9, and then we would go have breakfast together. Not right away, but like sometime after, we would go to have breakfast together, and we would talk about like what, you know, like he would ask me like, what would you do? Like, and this is like, so we really had like a brainstorming session while we eat. We talk tennis. Then we would go back to the office, like, and we talk, like, continue talking tennis until his next lesson at like 12 or 1. Like, and then we go into academy. So I was getting paid for 2 hours out of the entire day, just like 4 to 6.
Yep.
And I would play in like 2 to 4. I would play points against those kids to really like, and so like I was getting paid like maybe like $40, like in the entire day. I would like wake up 5:30. I would come back home like at like 8:30 or like 7 o'clock, 7:30 depending on the day, and I was getting paid like $40, and I didn't care. I couldn't care. I was the happiest coach on the planet because I get to learn so much. So that was to me like the biggest attraction, and like honestly credit to Tyler for doing that and for really sharing all of that knowledge and allowing me to be around him like that to learn. It's like never will be forgotten for sure.
And Ty's always been great to like our group that was there. Ty's always been great to us. But one thing I want to highlight is like some people listening to this that might not know you super well might think that like a little bit of the story is like hyperbole. It's like, oh yeah, like maybe he woke up once or twice a day at 5:15 or whatever to go. Like no. This is what
it was like every
did.
day. Yeah, it was every day. It was like that was the weekly routine. 100%.
And the reason I think it's important to highlight that is if there are any young coaches out there where it's like you essentially you went from not working in tennis to being employed by like our lead governing body in a span of a couple years.
2 years.
And 2 years. And like that shit doesn't happen unless you do something extraordinary to make it happen.
Yeah.
Right? And I think there's one thing I find with young coaches at least, where it's like I think, and I probably do a little bit of this myself, but I think we sometimes expect things are just going to happen, or we wait around being like, well, it'll be my turn sooner or later, and there's not a ton of coaches who take it on themselves to be like, well, I'm going to make this happen. Like the amount of times that like I've sat in on somebody's lesson that I really respect for the same reason, to be like, what am I going to learn here? And I remember going to watch like Tom Curran at the BNR coach. I remember watching Peter Cameron coach. I remember the amount of time that like Ben Armstrong has spent with me or Tyler spent with me. And like Bill Cowan, when Bill Cowan got hired at Advantage Tennis International, and I was working there at the time as well, his first day there, I noticed on the booking that he had two hours of lessons before the 4 to 6 program. So I drive up to Veneto 2 hours early because like I get to see Bill Cowan. Bill Cowan's had more national champions than anybody in Canada. So it was like my own little master class, just sitting on the sideline watching Bill coach. But it's like, and now I'm tooting my own horn a little bit, but I think it's like, it's those things where it's not, when you do that stuff, it's not how am I going to get ahead, but it's a genuine curiosity of like, you just want to get better.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's the more you watch, and it's not necessarily you have to copy what those coaches are doing, but just understanding like the reason why they're doing, why are they, because there is a reason why good coaches are good coaches, because they're effective. They're more effective than that. They improve players faster in a more efficient way than everybody else. So must be something that they're doing, in order to accomplish that. So like you brought up very good point that, like observing and trying to figure out like not just the drill. The drill, it's not about the drill. It's about like why are you doing that drill? So the purpose behind it, and the purpose behind like the words like that. I was like lately I'm very interested in communication. Like what you say at what time. Like how many words does it take for you to deliver the message? Like that's been lately my like
there's a name for that, right? There's like a actual name for sort of how you use the words, and when you give breaks. There's actually like it's like I can't remember what it's called, but I remember, and we're jumping around a little bit, but in my Club Pro 1 that I did with David Phillips, who just like I think is a world-class educator. I'm not sure if you ever got to spend any time with David Phillips.
My CP1 was with him, with Andy Sutton and David Phillips.
Andy's great as well. But I remember like the way that David would deliver stuff would be, he would take a pause at the right time. Like he'd say something impactful, but he was so smart. And this was trained. It wasn't just like he just had this, but
100%.
He would say something impactful, and then he'd legit just wait for 5 seconds before saying the next word. And I remember being like a young adult and being like, wow, like he just gives you that extra time to really digest what it is that he just said. And now I've always been shit at that. Like, you know me, I tend to talk really fast and there's not many breaks and stuff. So it's one thing I'd like to get better at, but it's interesting that you bring it up too. Okay,
No,
so then
100%.
you're crushing NYTA, and then you end up working a lot with, well, you and Tyler were both working a lot with Rhea Verma. And you specifically were working a lot with her. And then she crushes the Nationals where she ends up finishing 5th, kind of out of nowhere at a junior under-18 Nationals.
Yeah.
Looking back, do you feel like, is that one of the results, or is that like what did that do for your own confidence as a coach to be in Nationals and to be like, hey, like I helped this. I was here for a lot of this.
So here's my thing, Alan. This is I've never like shared it with like really anyone. So you can feel special in that way. But look, I never, to this day, I never take full credit for players that I worked with another coach. I don't know what it is.
Well, that makes one of us, pal.
Because it's like, especially when there is more experienced coach involved, you know, like he's the leading voice. And I didn't feel like my contribution, I did something to contribute. Of course I did, sure. I know, but I cannot say Rhea Verma getting into like, you know, eventually into semis, like top 3, I think she finished like 4th or something, 5th, like first, and then, but I cannot say like that was my, like, you know, that's mine. I still think that's his, more his accomplishment. And I'm just kind of, I was there to help.
Right. Well,
similarly,
that's a really interesting thought. And it'd probably be a better society coaching-wise if more of us did that. And like, don't get me wrong, I have similar stuff too, where I think of two minds. One is like, we got to give ourselves credit when credit is due. But the other one is like, I list on my bio and stuff, and I feel I have a really close relationship with Josh Lapadat. And so like, when I was technically with Josh won under-18 Nationals. But it wasn't like Josh was with Adriano for years. He was in the Tennis Canada program before that. And Eddie Moran from Advantage Tennis International was a part of that as well. So really, like, at the time, Josh had 3 coaches. So it's, sometimes I feel funny when I refer to, like, when I put on my bio that I've coached under 18 national champion, because really it was like, with any of these players, it takes a village, right? But there might be times sometimes, I'm sure you can think back at times that you were there with Rhea and you might have said something to her that, like, you know, had a little bit of an impact. And we never know for sure. Like, there's no statistic on how much that has when they're, of an impact that has when they're in the match. Yeah. But I look back on my time with Josh, and I do think there's things that I said to him that helped. And I'm sure there's things that you said to Rhea as well that helped. So that's my long-winded way of saying super noble of you, but still, like, give yourself credit where credit's due, right?
So at what point do you say, like that's my player, like I made an impact? I can say, like, I can put that player on my resume. Like, at what point? I remember, you know, somebody, was it Louis Caillet that said that you have to work for half a year, like 6 months, like to really say, like, to see that that's the work you've done, and then you can kind of take it as yours.
I thought he said 2 years, to be honest, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
But then it's interesting because, like, the other part of it too is I do my best in talking about this stuff to say I've helped contribute to, or like I find it's, to what you're saying, it's tough to take complete ownership over a player. Yeah. And even, like, we've got a page of our website that talks about, like, our junior alumni and some of their accomplishments. And I try to make a point in all those alumni pages to talk about either the private coach before they were with us, or the program they're at before they were with us and stuff, to really show, like, it's not just like, again, it takes a village. And like, so many of our players have been coached by somebody in the GTA community at some point, right? Where it's like, it is all of us together to some extent. But to answer your question, I don't know what the answer is. Like, 6 months seems reasonable. Yeah.
Because I'm personally struggling with this. You know, like, just for my own, like, I don't know what to call it, but, like, even, like, let's say some players at the National Center that we, like, there was a team of coaches that worked, you know, with players. But again, in my mind, it's like, it's Andre Labelle who was in charge of their development. And yes, we did work. And I know, I can say, like for example, like Sasha Rosen, for that time, like Matt Overweld and Alex Mitrich, like, those were the boys who, like, I spent, like, so much individual time with, that I can say, like, like, in those 2 years, that's me.
For sure.
You know, like, so.
And just to jump in for a sec, with the foundation of TTA did a great job, you guys did a great job, and we're talking about now.
Yeah.
One committed to Princeton, one committed to University of Arizona, and one committed to Boston College.
Yeah.
So in terms of like the schools they're ending up at, it's like.
That's right.
But again, you play a role in that. Sorry, continue.
No, 100%. And so like in that, I can say like I coached those guys, you know.
Yeah.
But like let's say some other players, without naming names.
Can I?
Yeah.
So we had this discussion because I brought you up on the Gray Zone podcast.
That's right.
Where I said you were influential in Bianca's development.
Yeah.
And you sort of text me being like,
I texted back you like in the middle of I'm still listening to your podcast. I'm driving. I'm like, you know, pulling over like like parking brake, you know, hey, I'll just really, because it's like, you know, it's a value, I guess, you know, like it's a trade, it's a value, because I would hit with her once in a while, and I would feed her balls when she was like injured, like she was in a boot, she had a stress fracture at the time. So I would feed her, like we would joke around, I would play sometimes with her, sometimes I would have to take her to another club to play with her, because we had some stuff like at the club, like either like exams or something, you know. I would take her to Donalda.
Yeah.
On clay to play with her. But I, again, like it, man, like it's, I don't think, like, funny story about Bianca. Okay, this is like, okay, just to answer that question once and for all, this is how influential, like probably the most influential moment of me working or being on court with Bianca. Okay, and I'll just leave it at that. We were playing a slice game where it's just like backhand to backhand cross, slice only. The ball cannot bounce 2 times in the service box, you know? So you just like basically like cross-court exchange of slices. Yeah. And Bianca is winning. We're playing up to 7. She's winning 4-0. She starts kissing the crowd.
No way.
Yeah, she starts kissing the crowd. We're in like court 1, I believe, at Tennis Canada, you know? And I was like, really? Like really 4-0? Like we're not even like really? You're gonna do that?
Boggy D.
You're gonna do that now? So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna. And you know, like my level of play, like slice is probably the only shot I can compete with. You know, like with Bianca or with anybody else. Like that's my best shot. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna show you what's the deal here. So I come back and win 7-4.
Yeah, baby.
And then I'm like, listen, like. You started kissing. You already, your head was already like somewhere else. You didn't finish the job. You know, I'm okay with you kissing the crowd when you beat me 7-0. I have no problem losing to you 7-0. But you know, and then you know, like a couple years later, she wins US Open, and then after the final, I see her kissing the crowd. You know, like doing the kisses to the crowd.
That's
and I was
too
like,
funny.
And I was like, man. So that's it. You know, like I.
You're modest.
No, really, man. It's true. Like it's true. Like I spend only like so little time on court with her, and I was never coaching her. I would hit or I would just joke around. I was more like a hitting partner at times. Again, I wasn't even a good hitting partner to her, I feel like. But anyway, I'm just like, listen, I
get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
I'm a modest guy, and I know I really want to make. I respect. I guess it comes out also for out of respect for everybody that worked with her, and I saw how much effort went into her development, how many people were behind her success. Yeah. Like Andrew Labelle, you know, you have Sylvain Bruno, like Nathalie Tauziat, you know, like, and Simon LaRose also at times. So it's like there's so many people, and also like hitting partner, like Nikolai Hasek, who was at the time he was hitting with her more.
Shout out Nico.
Shout out to Nico, back in Switzerland now. He's in Switzerland now. Yeah. So anyway,
it takes a village, right? And it takes a village.
So it's like I was just like, you know, like a small like sand. How do you call those things? Like
grain of sand.
Grain of sand, exactly. In this, you know, village full of sand.
Okay. So sorry, we're getting sidetracked again, but then
it's all good. We have time, man.
So you have this great result at nationals with a player that you're working with a little bit, and how I recall the story, but you tell me that you had sort of said to Marie-France Mercier, you were like, hey, I'd really like to make a go at like being a real performance coach, and MF then put you in touch with the right people at Tennis Canada, and Ty helped with that too. What
I asked Marie-France. And Marie-France Mercier is a director of coaching development, if I'm not
I think
mistaken.
that's right. Yeah.
And she was
If that's
one
not
of
her title, that's what she does. But if that's not her title, that's her.
that's right. So, and she was a course facilitator of my coach too. And I asked her, listen, can I, because again, remember, like me, I'm always about learning. Like, I don't care, like, titles, positions, like this, that. Like, to me, it's like, can I learn? So I asked her, like, can I observe? Because I what I did with Tyler, I was like, can I do it with somebody else? You know?
Yeah.
So can I observe a national program, like a national coach work, you know, just I'm there, like, you know.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, I'll put you, I'll ask Andre, who was in charge at that time, Andre Labelle, and then, you know, I'll connect you guys two. And I came out a couple times again, like, obviously, like, just like to observe. And I think I came up like 5 times or something like that throughout the spring. And then for the summer, the players left to Europe, like to European tours.
Yeah.
And Andre was super knowledgeable, obviously, like, and he was super nice and like ready to share. Like, I was on court with him and he would just like talk to me. I was like, what the hell, man? Like, it's, so he's like, so you see, like, I'm doing this because, you know, like, I always want, so he started talking to me. I was like, what the hell? You know, I was like so impressed so that he would be like sharing all of that information, you know? So I'm like, you know, my ears are like this, like, I would always like have like notes or voice recording, like something that I learned, you know, like, and I would re-listen to it, like, you know, like, cause that would be my reliving that moment. So like I would re-listen my own notes that I would make. So that was huge. And then that summer, Andre gave me a call and say, hey, how would you like to work with me as an apprentice coach, you know, at the center? And I'm like, sure, like, just can I just like call you back in like 2 days, just to go over it, and like, you know, the rest is history. Awesome. I actually, funny story, I called MF and I said, MF, I'm really nervous, like, what do? I feel bad for leaving Tyler because, you know, he's been so good to me and he invested so much time in me. Yeah. And, you know, like, that was very emotional for me to leave my first mentor. And, you know, like, he was more like than a mentor, it was like a friend, you know? Sure. But Mary France, listen, if you really want to, you know, become like a true high performance coach, and not like a true, but like to elevate your knowledge and the amount of things that you will learn there, you cannot, you know, like, you just have to take it. There's no other way.
And shout out to MF. It comes up in every one of our podcasts as well, but just shout out to MF, right? Just being a great leader and just being great at
she's
so
amazing.
On the right
She's
track.
amazing. I still, like, once in a while, I still would send her text like, hey, thank you for that, because it's like, honestly, it changed my life. Not just like coaching life, but just like life forever.
Oh, for sure, man. For sure.
Amazing.
And after all that help from Andre, here you are trying to take full credit for Bianca on a podcast.
You son of a gun.
No, that's great. Yeah, so that's the story. And then, okay, so then, if you don't mind me asking, we're sort of getting towards the tail end of it here, but with well, maybe we're not.
Just for everybody who came to this show and still here, who came for Alastair, we're going to start with Alastair in a few minutes. I promise.
Alastair's useless. Don't worry about Alastair. We're talking Boggy D the rest of the time. So then, okay, sorry, 2 quick stories.
Yeah.
And I'm rambling here. The day you accepted the job, you know, you and I hung out the day that you accepted the job. Do you remember that?
I don't. Actually, okay. I don't.
So you were living around Yonge and Davisville.
Yes.
And I had a player in the finals of under 12 selections.
Okay.
So you texted me and you were like, hey, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, this is wild. Like, this is, congrats, man. This is wicked. Yeah. And I was like, what are you doing? And you're like, oh, I'm just at home. I was like, oh, I'm going to go to Ace Toronto Tennis City because I have a player in the final. Do you want to come?
Yes, I remember. Okay, I remember that. We were sitting.
Do you remember who the players are? This is the trivia. Do you remember who the 2 players were?
Oh, dude.
Because one of them was in the TC program for a long time.
Are you see? Was it Matt?
No.
No, I don't. I don't want to.
So it was okay. Wow. So my boy was David Galberg.
Yes, I remember David. Yes, I remember David. Yeah, you worked with him at that time. Yes.
And the other one was Stefan Simonovic.
Really?
The Niagara
my God.
one.
Oh boy, the lefty, huh?
Yeah.
Oh no, the righty.
The righty.
Oh, sorry,
right.
the righty. Yeah. Okay, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. And And if you remember the score of that final, I'll be even more impressed. But that's.
Are you
Nah,
kidding me?
I'm messing with you. But,
Do you remember the score?
I was 0-0 for
you do.
David, so that's the only reason I
I
remember.
was gonna
it,
say Love and Love. Why did I say? Because for some reason I thought like that was like really like I don't know, like that's just the first score that popped in my head.
Right.
But anyway,
David is so under 12. David is so tough. So that's
Yeah.
okay. So then you get to tour all over the world with stuff. Like, okay, you're practically coaching some of the best identified players in Ontario, some of the best identified players.
I like how you said that, and we'll talk about that as well on the.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you start traveling a ton.
Yeah.
Like there was a point where you and I were hanging out a lot, and then it just seemed like one point it was like, oh, Bogdan is on the road. He's just gone.
Yeah.
You know?
It's true.
And I'm sure part of that is awesome, and it's like anytime I've traveled, and I really should do more of it, but anytime I've traveled, just my own eye as a coach has gotten so much clearer, so much more like, well, this shit really is like, this is really simple.
Yeah.
Now, it's not to say that the implication to get your player to do what's happening on an international stage is easy, but what they're doing is very simple.
Yes.
So what was your experience like just touring for what seemed like 13 months out of a year?
Yeah. Just like you said, the biggest like eye-opening was on the players level, because it's like, you know, like you're coaching, let's say, in a bubble, literally, like in your own bubble. You have your players.
Could not be more literal.
Right? So it's like you're coaching in your bubble, in your academy, and you're used to a certain level. And when a kid that's a little bit better comes to your practice, you're like, wow, this guy or this girl is like great. Okay? But nationally, that person might not be that good, you know, if you take all the Canada. So now you go like into a bigger bubble, which is like Europe, you know, best players in Europe, or like Latin America, best players like in the world.
Yeah.
And then you see like, okay, so these are the best players. First of all, holy shit. You know, the level is just like, they're like pros, literally, they're like pros at 14, with some, of course, you know, inaccuracies, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit physically, not quite there yet. But they look like pros with all their routines and all that. It's like, man, at 14, you know? So you look back in Canada, it's like, oh my God. So first thing is just to see the level.
Yeah.
Okay? And then once you start seeing the level, the next question is like, okay, how do you get your players to that level? So that's like the biggest thing. And what do you have to do from like 8 years old? So once you see like what's the best, and you know you also have some experience working with good coaches, in your mind you start immediately breaking it down. Like, okay, if I had a 6-year-old or 8-year-old, how would I structure my year to get them here at 14?
Right.
And what does training have to look like? So that's what I started like right away, like thinking, and obviously like having players at the center, I was curious, okay, how are we gonna get these guys here?
Yeah.
And you know, like looking at again how Andre Labelle was working had a huge influence on me. I was like blown away by the little, you know, like exercises, like technical work that he would do, tactical drills. I was like, man, it's so simple, but like I saw players improve like in a span of like 10 minutes, like this, you know,
crazy, right?
So fast. And I was like, wow. Yeah. And, you know, like it was funny, like Andre would do a drill. I remember we would come, you know, like do our regular sessions. Andre would do a drill, and then he would show me, like, and I would listen, and I would, you know, and he would do this simple drill, and I would go back on the court, take that same player, you know, like, and I'm like, why it's not working when I'm doing that?
Funny,
you know?
It's too funny, yeah.
It's like, and then Andre is like doing exactly the same thing, saying exactly the same words, and the player's like, I was like, what the hell is it? Like, so but then you notice the little details, right? Like as you work further and more and more with the guy.
And just to jump in on that, it's so funny with like, in doing the Coach 3, one of the things I thought was really interesting is, for anybody listening, there's a big component of the Coach 3 is you have to develop your athlete to be either a performer or to be very focused or a competitor within training.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. We got so much time to practice it. And one day I'd go out and do a performer drill with a group of coaches, and it would just be awesome. It'd just be like popping. And the next day we have evaluations with players. So I go and do the exact same drill, be like, this is an easy pass.
Yeah.
Exact same drill, exact same circumstances, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it's just so funny sometimes how like there's this nuance of coaching where sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work.
And it's something that you talked with Zach as well. You know, it's not about the drill. You know, it's not about, and we also talked a little bit about it. It's not about, you know, like the things that you know. It's like why this is happening and how do you progress that? Like what's the purpose behind this movement that you guys are working on right now? Is there a progression? How do you want this to look like? You know, what's the end result? And understanding that makes you really nail it, and then it becomes easy. Yeah. But sorry, it's like a little longer answer to your question.
No, I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah, but to me that was like the first thing is like the level of everything. You know, like the level of consistency, level of play, level of routines, professionalism. Yeah.
Is there one player or a couple players that you saw while touring that right away you're just like, they're going to be great? And a player that's now, it's probably been long enough now that they would have made it now if they're going to make it. Like outside of Canadian players, is there anybody you saw that you're just like really impressed with?
I saw. Okay, so here's the thing. Like in the first year, probably, I was just blown away by the level, and I was like, okay, so if like I was like, all of them are gonna make it, you know. So it's like they're so great. It's like there's no chance, you know. So it's like, but it was really tough to identify. So like natural, you know, like curiosity was like, so who's gonna make it? So like if all of these guys are so freaking good, what's gonna determine that this is, you know, the next, you know, top 10 player, this is top 5, like what? Like it's impossible to say, like, you know, it's so hard. But some of the names that I remember seeing young Marta Kostyuk, and it's all like I also like, it's funny, like, because I saw most of these players in Rapantini, we used to have a G1 before they had J tournaments. They used to be G tournaments. Yeah, so
now they changed it again. Now it's like they're using like .0s and stuff. It's I don't know. It's weird now.
Okay. It's just like doesn't matter, man. It's like, but anyway, we used to have like G1 in Rapantini. It's basically most of the players used it as a preparatory tournament for US Open. Yeah. And Dennis played it. You know, like Felix played it. You had Bianca who played it as well.
Just to jump in on the 1 year that, because I think you came with our Coach 3 group, or you were with Tennis Canada that year there.
Yeah, that's right.
That 1 year that Felix was there and Dennis was there, if you go back and look at the draw, like Dennis and Felix were there, Berrettini was there, Tsitsipas was there. Yeah. You go down the list, there was like, there ended up being something like, I don't know, 7 dudes that had been top 10 in the world that played in that one tournament in Rapantini. Yeah, it's fascinating. But I remember seeing like Tsitsipas, like you said, like that who stood out. Like I remember he was the first seed and he had, like you played on center court first round, and he won like 7-5, 6-4, you know. But again, like 7-5, 6-4, it's not like he was first seed, but it's not like he was so good that, you know, like 7-5, 6-4 is a very close match, right? Yeah. So Casper Ruud, I remember seeing, like I was saying, young Kostyuk, and like it's hard, man. It's hard to say, like when you it's easy like now looking back and it's like, oh yeah, I can see why, but no, you don't see why. And like one more thing, I remember I was seeing at 14, I went to Russia. Sorry, not when I was 14. I went for 14 tournaments in Russia, like U14s, with some of our players. And there was this Ukrainian guy that we played, Maxime Saint-Hilaire, a player from Quebec. He faced him in one of the rounds. Like he ended up being second, I think, in that tournament, Maxime. But he beat this guy in quarterfinals. The guy was such a mess, like crazy, like crying, throwing rackets, going like mad, like crazy, zero emotional control. To me, like it looked like no game really, you know. But now he's like a national, like Davis Cup, you know, player. It's like, what the hell, man? Like it's so things can change really quick, you know. And it's just like another basically
repetition for me, that's like, don't cross out the kid, you know, like, because I remember working at the center, you know, that's like maybe one of the negative things that happened to me when I was there. And partially because you're exposed to so many great players, you know, when you travel, you really see like the best in the world, the best in their age category right now. And that was the thing, like I didn't really, like that had a big effect on me, because when I would go back to Canada and I would see some kids play, I was like, well, I mean, he's so far away.
Right.
So right away, you're kind of like, your belief in the kid is gone, you know?
Yeah.
So that was
but also a very mature thing to realize too, right?
Yeah. And I realized it, you know, when I realized it when I quit Tennis Canada, and when I went to Mayfair, to one of the clubs in Toronto, and I started like my own program there. And it's funny because I come from World Cup. So like my last tour at Tennis Canada was World Cup 14s in Czech Republic. Again, seeing best in the world. You can, like, it's just like, those guys are like Ferraris at 14. They're built so great, guys, girls. And I come to Mayfair to tryouts at Mayfair, where kids come like in running shoes and, you know, like Canadian Tire rackets to try out. And I was like, there's no chance I'm going to have a program here. Right. And then you realize that, you know, and now like when a kid comes to me, that's like a provincial level, and I can see, I was like, wow, this kid is great. I'm going to make him so good. There's so much more potential. So now you see it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
You know, when you kind of take that away, you know, like, oh, there's no chance this kid's going to make it. You turn it into, okay, how good can I make this kid? Because now, you know, the situation, like you said, the tables flipped, you know, and now you're not working with, you know, your national group of players. And how do you get them to here? Now it's like, now you have your club player, your, you know, maybe like a rookie tour, transition tour, and how do you get them to national level? So I guess if you take it step by step, you know, if you break it down to that, it's easier on you as a coach. And then last thing, it's a very long answer, but like last thing, I remember when Paul Anacone, I believe it was him who said, he was in Toronto during our TPA conference, you know, he was like the main speaker, and he said, I don't care who I work with, you know, I treat them all as world number one.
Love it.
So I think, you know, like if you take that idea and you really apply it to any player that you work with, like your full commitment, your own personal commitment, don't look at like, oh, like, but he's not going to make during Junior Orange Bowl. Like, that's like, again, that's like players thinking about outcome. Yeah. It's the same mindset that you have to apply to your own like work. So instead of that, you say, okay, what's the best thing I can do for this 10-year-old who's just started playing rookie tournaments to get him better? And then it's just day by day making player better. That's what we tell our players to do at the end, you know?
For sure.
Yeah, man.
And just to jump in, it's what, for a large part of my coaching career, when I was growing up, if I was evaluating a player, my evaluation process would always be, well, what can't they do? And I've really, like, in my now old age, and I'm not sure if you can tell on camera, but I'm starting to go gray, I've really tried to change that, where if I evaluate a player now, I really try to start with, like, what do I like about them?
That's
right. And then go from there. Because I think, too, as a coach, like, if you really believe you're a good coach, then the things that I don't like I can change. I can change that in a player. That's right. But it's like, what are the characteristics they already have that I really like? And I think it's like, that's certainly, I think, made me, I don't know, just overall correspond better with players.
Yeah.
Because there's certainly some players that I see that maybe there's not a lot to like, but if you find something that you do like, then it's
motivating, right? And it's that endless debate. Like, what do you work on, weaknesses or strengths, right? Like, and so I think you gotta believe in your play. That's when I like, last thing I'll say about this. That's when I realized how much belief you know, like how much belief really means to a player. Because you know, like when you have a coach who comes back from like a world-class tournament, okay, and they know deep down that your player, like their player, is not gonna get there because it's like the level is too good. It's not gonna happen. It's just not. Yeah.
To jump into, people are so what's the word? People pick up on things like, I'm a big believer in energies and vibes and stuff, and like,
100%.
I can tell you when I have not believed in my player, I've not said anything about it, but just internally, I just haven't believed in them. My player's known.
Oh yeah, they know. They feel it, man. They feel it.
Yeah, and when I've really believed in my player without saying it, my player's known.
And they listen when they know you care. It's like this famous saying, right? Like your players don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So it's like
I've actually never heard that. I like that, man. That's tattoo worthy.
I heard it somewhere, like on another podcast, but it's very true, and that's why you see sometimes coaches develop players who are not who, like, let's say their coaching level is not necessarily there to develop that kind of players, but they just do it because they just have this blind belief that the player can do it. They put in the work, and that's, you know, players follow. Players also blindly believe. They're like, look, I can do it.
For sure.
You know, like I can go down the line from outside and I'm gonna hit that winner. So it's like, doesn't matter. So it's like it's really training that. It's like it's training like that belief in the player. So I think that's huge.
To quote Bobby Mahal, it's better to have a coach, like maybe a less quality coach who really cares about you 20 hours a week than it is to have a world-class coach who doesn't care about you 2 hours a week.
Yeah, that's a great
And I think that's true. I think that's really true.
It's very true. No, it's a big one. Al, we're 52 minutes in. I think it's about time we talk about you a little bit. What do you think? What do you think?
All right.
So listen, and listen, when I make this video, I'll make sure that there is like a link to skip, you know, all my banter just to when Al starts talking.
Dude, that was interesting. I liked your banter though. I thought it was good.
Listen, I love talking about tennis, you know, like, and I'm happy you kind of turned it a little bit, and because like I have a lot to say and I love talking. Listen, this is my this is our passion.
Yeah.
So listen, how did you get into coaching? Because it always fascinates me how, you know, people get fascinated with this job. I know my story, you know, like, but everybody's story is different, you know. Like I talked to Chris, I talked to Mike Hall, you know, and it's like everybody's different. And I talked to Dean Colburn, and we talked to other coaches in general. So how did you get into coaching?
Yeah, well, it's I mean, it started with being a really shitty player, so that's number one.
Yeah.
But number two, I was laying in bed one night, and it was late, and all of a sudden this angel just comes to the window, and they're like, "Man, the tennis world needs you." And I'm like, "Oh, word?" So no, to be honest, it's like I knew really early on that whatever I did in life was going to be something tennis related because I love tennis. Tennis has legit given me everything that I have in life.
Yeah.
And to say that, I say more than anybody, I fucking hate tennis. But no, it's like really has given me everything. I think one of the things that helped me out as I was getting into tennis is I learned or was aware really early on that my level wasn't good enough to make it as a pro. And I say that where I probably could have been a lot better than I was, but really by the time I was 18, 19, it was like, well, I'm not where, like Rafa was winning, I think I'm Rafa's age. Rafa was winning slams, and I think I'm a year older than him actually. So I was like, okay, clearly my level's not there. And the reason I highlight that is because I still wanted to do something in tennis. So from a very young age, it was like, all right, well now like I'm going to do coaching or I'm going to do club management. There's something I want to do that's in tennis. So that was sort of the start of it there. And I think when a lot of other people my age were going to college to play on teams or going to university to get a degree, like I consider myself like I was a full-time tennis professional from the time I was 18. And so within that, like I worked my way through, I guess, certification and well, even before that, I worked at Kew Gardens Tennis Club. And to make a long story short, And like Kew Gardens Tennis Club essentially raised me, and three of my best buddies. So it was myself, my buddy Fraser, my buddy Spence, and my buddy Boris, who's moved away since then. But like we would just in the summer months we'd just live down there, and we were court rats. We'd play whenever we could. But so many of the members just sort of took us under their wing, and like they were really cool to us. But they also I can look back on so many times that like just members of the club were just giving us random advice, and it wasn't preachy, and it wasn't like, you know, sometimes when you're a young stupid kid, like you don't want advice. I think the group of us, we sort of always were really willing to listen to the advice that some of these members were giving us. And it sounds weird because like a lot of them were like family, you know, and I still have great relationships with a lot of people at Q. And now what Q's changed a little bit where it's not really the same as it used to be, but this is a very long-winded way of just saying that I think early on I wanted to have a career in tennis, and early on I maybe started my career in tennis a lot earlier than most people do.
I think it's great that you mentioned that club, you know, that you grew up with, and the community. So it just highlights how important it is to have, you know, those local clubs, you know, like those summer clubs that are just love tennis, and they can spread that love of the game to, you know, to potentially the next, you know, coach or the next tennis player or the next just somebody who will stay in our sport, because it's
and that's getting lost now, Boggy. Like I really do feel like, and I need to spend more time around community clubs, but like Q is not that anymore. Like a lot of these community clubs aren't that anymore, partly because number one, we're all these clubs are so busy that it's kind of get people in, get people out, blah blah blah. But there's going to be a really negative long-term effect of that on the industry, and specifically the industry as it relates to coaching. Because if I think of Q overall, I'm going to run through real quick the professionals in tennis that Q's produced. Brian Draxel, whose son was number one college player and is 500 in the world. Me, Rachel Gould, who leads some coaching development for Tennis Canada. She's a Club Pro 3, Coach 3. Yeah, Ryan Chow, who runs Winston Churchill, he's a Club Pro 3, Coach 3. Paul Cairns runs the Boulevard Club, Club Pro 3, Coach 3. His brother, John, who works high performance at ACE. I'm going to miss some in here somewhere, because there's certainly more. Jason James, who's at Mayfair Lakeshore. James Salmon, who's at Mayfair. Daniel Salmon, who's at Mayfair. And I'm sure I'm missing some names, some very obvious names in here as well.
That's huge.
But just like from that group alone, we're talking about like in the ballpark of 10 tennis professionals that I think have had a really big impact on tennis, at least in Ontario, if not Canada. And that's from one community club. Yeah. So I'm getting sidetracked a little bit, but if we lose that, like, and part of the thing too is like Brian Draxel and James Salmon's and Jason James' generation, they were really influential in our generation. Yeah. And now our generation tried to be influential with the next generation, but that was around the time that things sort of went the way of overpopulated tennis clubs, right? Anyway, that's end of rant, but yeah.
So what do you think clubs have to do right now in order to restore that?
So I think I have no qualms, obviously because I'm biased, with commercial clubs acting in their best financial interest. That makes sense. What I have a really big issue with is not-for-private community clubs that operate as pseudo-commercial clubs. And I think you're seeing a lot of this. Now, I think part of what has to change as well is if you're a community club, I think there's something in the bylaws that say this as well, where your membership should be comprised of members of the community. But right now, there's no really way clubs are vetting this. Like, that's right. Yeah, they take your address, but like Q, for instance, there's some people who live in the West End that are members at Q. Like in Q's in the East End. And that like, I get that. That's fine. But right now, a lot of your community clubs aren't really community clubs. And then I think the other part of it, too, is it's like, and this is tricky to say, but how do you have, okay, it's going to be really, really preachy, but financials aside, you have to make way for the next wave or generation of players that are going to one day become your adult members. Yeah. And sometimes I think that has to be at the detriment of your adult programming or your adult court time. But I understand, like, I'm a high-performance coach. I understand my bias in saying that. But if you don't have that, if all of these community clubs are centered around adults and centered around just 95% of the court time being available to adults, you don't get the next generation of A, players, B, players that make up your membership, or C, people who at some point will consider a career in tennis. Because really, even now we're very understaffed. We could use an exponentially more people in tennis.
Yeah,
and
you're
you said
right.
it yourself, right? Like you're right now looking for, you could give somebody a great full-time year-round job, but it's very difficult to find somebody.
It's right. You're right. You're right. I think it's an issue in general, like junior court time.
Yeah.
You know, clubs in general don't like giving outside of programming, you know, like, and sometimes even that is an issue. But like, let's say right now there's a big problem in Ontario to find tournaments. Like I say, you know, like I have like meetings with parents and I say, hey, you have to play like 10 to 15 tournaments a year, you know, like, and you have to make sure you maintain your ratios. And they're like, how do we find tournaments? Well, just go on the OTA website. There's no tournaments.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, so you and I both work pretty closely with the OTA. I feel awful for those guys. Like, I feel awful for Kartik and Ziad, because they're really trying.
Yeah.
And Kartik and Ziad aren't like, they're not responsible for building new facilities.
Yeah.
They're responsible for trying to get tournaments done. But when all of these year-round clubs, or just clubs in general, are not willing to host tournaments for financial reasons, that's a really big issue.
Yeah. It has to be some sort of I don't know what's the solution. Maybe it's a subsidy, like from Tennis Canada's end. Maybe we have more tournaments out of Sobeys, you know, facility that's not being used to its full potential.
Well, that's true. That's,
you know,
true.
because like you have courts there, and like the center right now is part time, right? There's no full time center.
Yeah.
Like, why not host tournaments? And like, even like, I'm sure players would participate even if it's not only on the weekend. You know, like in Europe, they play tournaments Monday through Friday. Like they have you know, so finding a ways to maximize the facilities that we have. And I understand that's not perhaps ideal.
Yeah.
But you have to give juniors a way to compete. And one of the solutions is to find quality matches, is the Flex League that you started, right? Which is,
dude, that is a world-class segue right there.
right? But it's true. Like maybe since we kind of touched on that, maybe you can explain what that is for.
For sure.
Yeah.
And like all my other stories, this will be
if somebody's still listening us 1 hour, 2 minutes in.
Like all my other stories, this will be a fairly long one as well. But 4 years ago, I reached out to Universal Tennis, which at the time was called Universal Tennis Rating. They've since changed their name. And I pitched this idea, which is essentially like, I would like to run a citywide ladder. It's like a regular singles ladder, but I'd like all the results to influence UTR. And the reason for this is, personally at our academy, none of our athletes really ever, outside of maybe Lapidat and maybe Tiraspolsky, they've never reached the long-term athletic development standard for matches in a year. So if you're a parent listening to this and you're unsure of how much training your kid should be doing or how many matches your kid should be doing, there is a document, which I'm sure you've talked about before, Bogdan, called Tennis Canada's Long-Term Athletic Development. Yeah. They're currently revamping this document, but this document is the Bible for any tennis coach or any player. And essentially, it will give you all of the numbers, all the statistics of what your athlete needs to be doing to reach an international standard. And not even an international standard, just to make it as a pro. If you meet the standard, you're going to make it as a pro. I promise you that. Anyway, within the LTAD, it outlines how many matches per year an athlete's supposed to be playing. And again, none of our athletes were meeting the standard. So from my end, it's like, instead of complaining about it, it was like, well, is there something I can do to help this? And then the other part of this, too, is not completely noble, because I also see a financial gain for me in running something like that. So I reach out to UTR about this idea, and they're like, yeah, that's interesting. Well, we're not really going to do it right now, but maybe we'll circle back to you when we want to do it. I'm like, cool. And about a year later, UTR announces this thing called Flex League, which is essentially, it's the exact same idea that I pitched them.
Oh, my
God.
God.
I'm not going to suggest that I had this unbelievable idea of using a ladder for UTR. And of course, they had the same idea. Like, that would make total sense. But I will say the timing of it is suspicious, Universal Tennis. So years later, I sort of circled back to them again, being like, hey, I'd love to run Flex League in Canada. We piloted it in the summer with just recreational adults, which kind of worked, kind of didn't work. And so I went back to them again. I was like, listen, I just want to be really clear here. if we do this for high performance athletes of any age, this thing will pop off because nobody's playing right now. And so within the first couple weeks of us launching it in the GTA, we've got over 90 players that are registered, and their UTRs vary from like, we've got some guys close to 12 and some players all the way down at 1. So there's a really there's a great range of athletes that are doing it.
That's really cool.
I think our second session will grow even more than that. But the whole long-winded point of this, to your question, is like, this is an avenue for players to play 6 more matches each month, or a total of 60, like roughly 72 matches more a year they could be playing. And now, if all of our players in Canada and Ontario were playing that amount of matches, think how many more international players we'd have.
Yeah. So yeah, basically, for anybody who's listening, and any parent, any coach, perhaps, who doesn't know about this as well, you got to do it. You know, it's a no-brainer to me. Like I always promote players to play match, to find a match, you know, and just to avoid playing like even within your academy, like those 2 players that you constantly play. Just go again. It provides, I would say, like as close of a tournament experience, like in terms of like feeling nervous and, you know, without playing a tournament, because it's just a match, but still you're playing somebody new and a new, perhaps sometimes in a new environment, not necessarily your own club. You know, like it's great. So I commend you for doing that. So
thanks, Bob. Awesome. Thanks,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So let's go back. First of all, it's 1 hour 6 minutes. I don't care.
Sorry, dude.
I put my feet. No. It's all good. I'm just saying that I put my feet on the table because I don't care.
Yeah, baby.
It's you know, it's that time. So, how did you know, find out that I want to work with high performance athletes, like with players? I want to develop players.
Yeah. So, I was working at. Part of the reason was I always love development, and I think ego comes into it a little bit. Where any coach, you think you're great, or you think you have the ability to be great one day, right? So it started with a little bit of ego, but in doing my Coach 2, when I started doing my Coach 2, I wasn't coaching in the winter at the time, because part of that was I had a great job at Davisville Tennis Club in the summer, which allowed me to sort of do some other things in the winter. And Mary France pulled me aside after the first regrouping of the Coach 2, and she asked me, she's like, "Where are you coaching right now?" I said, "Well, I'm not. I'm just kind of hanging out." And she had said to me, and this is her words, not mine, but she said, "You're too good of a coach to not be coaching right now." So then she set me up with Tyler at NYTA, so I started to do more performance. And I'd been very lucky where I'd worked at a little bit at TTA, I'd worked at NYTA, I'd worked at Advantage Tennis International. So I sort of ran this gambit of working at a bunch of different academies and learning as much as I could from most people. And then from there, it just sort of turned into, like, I was very lucky to have the coaches that I did have growing up, but there's certainly things that I didn't get as a player that I really wanted to make sure that my athletes got if I was their coach. And I don't mean that negatively towards any of my coaches growing up, because I love them. I did. But so then it turned into a little bit more like, well, how can I really help some players? And that was also around the same time that, like, Milos was starting to pop off, Jeannie's starting to pop off. A little bit later, Dennis starts doing well. So I also came up at a time where it was very in to get involved in high performance tennis. You know?
Okay. So how did you go from, you know, turning tennis into your full-time passion and high performance tennis into your full-time passion to owning a club and leading one of the most successful academies in Ontario?
Well, that's high
for that matter.
So as mentioned, I was working at Davisville Tennis Club, and financially it was a great situation for me. And so part of it was in making a change. It actually wasn't to do anything high performance related, but there was an opportunity to lease a year-round facility that was being underutilized by the community. It was being run by Good Life Sports Clubs of Canada, and in Good Life's own words, they had no business or wanted nothing to do with running a tennis club. So seeing a financial opportunity, I reached out to Good Life to say to them, if you ever have interest in leasing your facility and you just collecting money and allowing the Supreme Court to do whatever the heck we want to do with the courts, we'd be open to that. And they responded pretty much right away and were like, yep. So, like, okay. But the funny part of the story is that was my opportunity to not coach anymore. I was like, this is great. Like, I'm going to get involved in some form of club ownership. Like, I don't have to coach anymore. Awesome.
I'm going to retire soon, baby.
But it's funny how then a couple coaches reach out here and there, where a really good buddy of mine that you know well as well, Adriano Fortivia, who was instrumental in Dennis's development, he would reach out from time to time because he's working with a couple young athletes, and he just needed court time. So I was working with like a couple kids that were pretty good, but then Adriano started to come and hang out at Supreme Court a lot. And then him and I would talk about stuff a lot. And then all of a sudden I think Adriano played a really big role in, I guess, reigniting a passion of mine for coaching. Because like I said, I was ready to not do it anymore. And then it almost becomes, for some coaches, like, it's almost like I'm competing as a coach. Where like I'm competing because I want my players to beat your player. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And then again, the ego takes off a little bit, where it's like you take it personally when your player doesn't do well.
Yeah. 100%.
And it's like, well, what can I do to make my player better? So I'm not sure if that answered your question at all, but
no, for sure. It's like that's your story, right? That's your path.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is it that you feel like? Because again, like, you know, you've developed certain skills like along your path. What do you think that you're doing really well that makes your players perform to the standards that they are?
Good question. I mean, it's not always easy to, I guess, praise yourself for things that you do well. But I think given the scope of the amount of hours most of our athletes at TSC train each week, which in the grand scheme is not very much. Like, for instance, Overveld right now is maybe at like 8 or 9 hours of training a week. And like Alec Engel, who's the under 16 provincial champion, is maybe in and around 10 hours a week. So like, it's not a lot. But the only reason I bring that up is I think one thing I'm really proud of is that we're able to be quite efficient in our training, given the limited amount of time that we have in comparison to some other players in Canada and Ontario.
I'm so happy you brought it up, because it really shows that you can be successful if you don't have to play like 20 hours a week to get to a certain level.
Yeah.
If you know what you're doing, and of course, if you don't have to play a catch-up game, from like somebody who starts late or somebody who's, but that's fantastic. So that's your conscious decision. I just want to make it clear for everybody listening. It's your conscious decision as a coach to have that player play this amount of time.
Absolutely not. No. So I
yes. Thank you for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.
No, don't get me wrong. Like, I would love a commitment from players. Like,
so again, it's their call.
Athletes who
it's their
great.
call.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's like, I would love athletes to be doing 20 hours a week all the time, like doing all the right things. And Chris mentioned this as well. Like, if you can afford it, I'd love athletes to do that.
Okay, I see.
But it just, the reality of running a 4-court facility that has a sold-out adult membership is court time is tough to come by. The reality of, for all of our athletes, academics are very, very important. Not to me, but to them.
Yes.
So that plays a really big role in it as well. So it's like, and then the other part of this too is, I think I'm curious your thoughts, most of the players that I've been working with for a while, their career trajectory before the pandemic was very, very different than it is now.
Yeah, 100%.
And I feel like, I feel absolutely gutted for a lot of athletes in Canada that 2 years of development was robbed from them. And robbed is not the right word, because it was a global pandemic, and like we're all feeling the fallout of that. And certainly is like, we just didn't know at the time. We just had to do what we had to do to keep everybody safe. Yeah. Right? Now, the unfortunate fallout of that is like, a lot of athletes completely missed a window. And like, you can catch up. You can. Yeah. But it's just very, very challenging.
Yeah. It's, listen, if we have to talk about that, I think it's important to mention that I'm just trying to find the right words. No matter what you believe in, like what happened during pandemic and what your beliefs are in terms of like, that's irrelevant. So no matter what you believe in, our government, did not do a good job of identifying let's say, what is safe to do, let's say, because, just following what they were saying, and what is not safe to do. Tennis
Right.
is one of the safest things to do in, like, doesn't matter what kind of like pandemic you have one player here, another player like God knows where.
Yep.
You have, everybody has their own set of balls, that they mark, and we can play and enjoy the game without even,
Right.
like having like being in contact with one another.
Yeah.
So I think if there was a little bit more thought, and perhaps they were overwhelmed by everything, but to put every single sport in one like category, like, to me that was just like not cool. I get it, like, let's say sports like, like contact sports makes sense because like I get it, but I don't understand like that you can go get a massage, for example, but you cannot play tennis where you don't even touch and
right.
So little things like this, but for sure.
And just to jump in for a second on that as well, I think, like, looking back, it was always like, okay, if I was in the government's shoes, what would I do? And I think I probably would have done the same thing that they did. And that's only to say, like, so much of the time we just didn't know was part of it. And the other part of it, too, is it's difficult to expect our government working remotely to make individual rules for every organization that exists. Now, I would love to say, well, tennis, they should have made this decision. And, like, I think most people in tennis would agree with that. But I guess we'll go back on it. It's just, we just didn't know at the time, right? We just didn't know.
Yeah.
But
no, that makes sense. But definitely those 2 years were so heavy. And I would love to see the statistics. How many kids, dropped out of tennis in general? Like, forget competitive. Just how many kids dropped out of tennis? And B, how many kids reduced their hours of training?
I mean, yeah.
Because from my experience,
wild, I guarantee.
Like,
and somebody will do those at some
point.
It's a lot, yeah. But that, like, so anyway, that going back to your question is, I'd love athletes to do more. I'm committed to a group of players that has outlined to me that this is the current hours they're doing is really the most they can commit to given their other goals of stuff. So we'll do as good of a job as we can do within those hours. Now, it's not to say there was times that was very difficult conversations between me and the players, and times there was very difficult conversations between me and parents, because, like I've said a couple times, it's like I have an ego. Like I was investing time in these athletes, A, because I really, really like them. I really like working with them, but B, because I thought they could be great. And so when their career plan or their potential path changes, I'm going to be fully supportive because it's their journey. It's not my journey.
100%, but it hurts.
But at the same time, it's like, well, I think sometimes parents don't realize or understand that it's like, this is my life as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that only makes you sound like an asshole. That only makes you sound like an asshole, but it's not meant to make me sound like that.
I don't think like an asshole, but more like as a passionate coach who sees, a potential that's not going to be realized to its fullest. And it's so. No, I think I think it only shows your vision and your confidence in your abilities. That you can,
nice
like, things that you could have done, would have done to that player.
Certain things that I hoped I would have been able to do, and I think as a coach you want that justification one way or the other.
Yeah.
But the last thing I'll say on that too is, I think I'm at a stage in my life now where I think that's probably it for me in terms of, like, taking a group of athletes completely under my own personal wing to try to make it happen. Now that I'm certainly always going to be involved in coaching, and I think there's probably ways that I can have a greater reach or greater impact on a larger group of players. But in terms of, like, I don't think I'll take a Jensen mechanic from 7 years old again and work with him consistently until the time that he's whatever. I don't think I'll take an Overveld 20 hours a week again. And that's and again, I want to stress, like, I've valued and appreciated them and all the time that I've spent with them, but it's sooner or later it's like you think about, like, well, how many times can you do it? And then what are other ways that you can maybe help more athletes, Yeah,
you're right. I think if if any player would ask me, let's say to go on a tour with them, like I'm not saying even like pro tour, like I don't just like even junior tour, like, and let's say the pay is somewhat close to what I'm getting right now, and it's so just to make it's not about the money, right? So if money is not the deciding factor, let's say like I wouldn't do it. It's just like there's time and place to do it, and some coaches can do it longer and some coaches can do it forever, and but like it's what you say, that like to work and improve and potentially to make an impact on one kid versus make an impact on your whole program, and to educate the parents and to work with kids and to really make sure that you create an environment and they make friendships. And so to me that's more, so how do I guess it's more like it's scalability for me now, like how many kids and parents and coaches I can help now.
Now, so, in that as well, it's like you and I both, you much more so than I, but we've spent time on the road. We've toured, we've traveled, we've done our best to help a lot of players in Canada. And I go back to something from earlier where it's like, now there's going to be an incredible opportunity for like, and you and I aren't old, I think we're both around 35 or something, but it's like there's an incredible opportunity for the next crop of people who are going to be great coaches to really seize an opportunity where there's going to be a lot of great players who need help traveling, and they need help with people who are really going to be committed to their tennis. And I hope there's at least a couple coaches that really take advantage of that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's and it's just like the cycle, right? It's like it's always been, older coaches they want to do different things, younger coaches different priorities. They don't care, like it's just like, let me do this, let me play, let me travel, let me learn. So I think it's fantastic. Al, I really want to ask you, so what is it that you believe that your team and yourself personally are doing so good with those players in the limited amount of hours, specifically knowing that it's limited amount of hours, that still make them perform, still make them improve?
Jeez. So I'd say, and we touched on this earlier, but I really think that our entire staff, and I'm very lucky to work with a group of really certified coaches. But the big trait is, number one, we all give a shit. So as much as I can talk about, I might not go through the whole process again with players. It's like if I am on court, it's like I do really give a shit about the players I work with. That's where it starts. And then the next thing of that is like we don't ever do anything on court that wouldn't be considered a completely realistic situation. So like our training, and Ben Armstrong might not agree with me, but our training, I think, is much more open than a lot of other training environments. It's certainly heavily influenced by decision-making / reaction training, where I think a lot of coaches would be shocked at how little technical feedback we give in our group training. And there's part of that function is that we've inherited a group of fairly complete tennis players, in our ITF group at least. And then with our HP group, which is under 14, Jordan Clark, who's my right-hand man, who's just like phenomenal, he's doing a really good job of making sure that they're technically sound. But even in that, like all of Jordan's kids are doing a lot of private training where most of the technical work gets done. So again, when it comes to the 8 hours a week of group they're doing, it's like, well, they're constantly and only seeing the most common things that are going to happen at their level of play.
Yeah.
And there's legit, like, I think as good coaches or what my definition of a good coach is, or a good leader or a good program is, if you set up a drill that makes sense and is realistic and smart, you actually have to coach very little. Or like,
that's true.
The drill will almost be guided discovery for the athlete of like how they need to improve their performance.
100%.
And I say that where sometimes I'm sitting at training and it's like, I don't say much for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And you know me, like, I love the sound of my own voice. I love if other people think that I'm smart about something like that. But it's like, there's sometimes it's like, no, they're getting it. They're getting it.
Yeah,
and it goes back to MF for the fourth time today, where MF has told me throughout my career, Al, shut up. So, MF, I'm trying. You know?
No, I think it's great that you're saying that, because the environment that we create is really true coaching, and it goes to show that if things are done right, you don't have to say much other than, like maybe like throw in a joke here or just like a comment there. It doesn't have to be about tennis necessarily, or just like you ask a question. You go like, hey, like, what do you think about that shot? Or do you think, like, is there anything you would do better or different? So I think it just shows, like, again, the amount of knowledge that you guys have, and you in particular, to organize it in the way that, it's exciting for players to do that exercise, and it's exciting for them to discover, like, okay, so what is this? Oh, I get it now. It's like Judy Murray when she came to Toronto to talk again at the conference, at the TPA conference. She was saying something along the way, like, similar to what you're saying about, like, I set the drill and let them discover. She would, like, put a marker and say, you have to finish the point in this area. Go. Or she's like, you have to hit a winner here. Go. Or you're not allowed to hit in this box ever. Go.
Right.
So, and things like this, exercises like this, I love them. First of all, because I believe the less we talk, and that's what you learn throughout your career, to talk less, because the more you know, the more you understand, the less you need to explain and to, and to communicate to your players. So, you organize a drill like that, and you see how, and really work not to tell them, because you want to, and I'm making that mistake still, that
Same.
You want to help, like you want to, like, but no, it's like, learning, like how the kids, like they were saying, like how they were learning to swim back, and you would throw them outside of the boat and see, like, like see and they learn eventually, like it's, I mean, it's a.
No, I get you.
But it's that. It's not like, right away, like giving them a hand to. No, it's let's see how their brain works.
Yeah.
How are they? And once they discover, even if it takes longer for them to discover than by you saying, hey, just go down the line, or like, whatever that is.
Yeah.
It's gonna stick.
For sure.
Like it's just there for the rest of their training. 100%, like for sure, they just, like, they got it.
Yeah. And so, I'll add to what I was saying a second ago, where I don't want anybody listening, if you're still listening at an hour and 30 minutes, congratulations. But I don't want anybody listening to think that any of these ideas are my own ideas. I've stolen every
100%.
goddamn idea
Same.
and every drill that I've ever seen 100%. In my life. So it's like, just.
That's why it's beneficial to have mentors, to continue learning, to never stop questioning things, like, in a good way, and being curious, because that's how you discover all of that. Like, there's nothing. And then, having all that experience and knowing all that material, you can improvise a little bit. You can add a little bit of Al flavor to that drill.
Right.
That would make more sense to you based on your statistics, the data that and maybe like, oh, maybe I'll modify what I know here. That would make more sense.
Yeah.
So let's talk. Go ahead.
Sorry, the last thing I'll say on this too is the other part is, in a very weird way, between Jordan, Bronco, and I, who lead most of the development stuff, I don't think we ever think we're doing a good job. And I don't mean to say that we ever think, like, man, we're doing an awful job, but I think the mindset is always like, that could have been better, or that could have been.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important too, where it's like, what's the standard you're training to, right? And it's like, I think, like, we've had a lot of provincial champions over the last couple of years, which has been great. It's not our goal to produce provincial champions.
Yeah.
We've had a couple national champions. It's not our goal to we're underperforming in what we're looking to accomplish. Like, we want to produce international standard players.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when your goal is that, and you're critical of your program, or maybe critical is not the right word, but you're critical of your training all the time, in a sense of, like, you're continuing to try to make things better, then I think it becomes easier to have national champions or provincial champions.
That's right. But it's also because well, first of all, it becomes like, in order, okay, like you set a goal you know, and you break it down like step by step. Okay, well, how do I get there, right? It's like that. My goal is to become like the academy, for us to become the academy that produces international. Okay, for that we would think we'd need to produce provincial level players, you know. So how do we do that? And then you break it down, and then like how do you do? And so it just because it's like it's closer to your goal, right? It's like at the bottom. Like I don't want to say at the bottom, but it's like at the, you know, in the lower section of how to get to international level. So you kind of, and once your vision is clear, again, we talked about it earlier, it makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about statistics.
Let's do it.
How much, like, so you posted some stuff today online about boys 12, girls 12, and junior orange ball U14. Is that right? And you posted that, like, just to, again, please, can you maybe talk about it, like about that stuff, so that I don't, you know, like say it wrong, like just,
I will say those stats were sent to me by Ben Armstrong, who is, I would consider one of my closer friends, who also happens to be just an absolutely world-class coach. Yeah. And so he's been like a massive influence in my own coaching. And so he'll send me stuff a lot of time too. And what Ben will do is Ben will audit our program a lot, and Ben will think something's not going well, and Ben will outline that to me by sending these statistics about stuff that we're not doing a good job of.
I love it.
So the stats were essentially, or the way I interpret those stats is it's dispelling a little bit of the first four balls myth, where Craig O'Shaughnessy had these statistics on how often professional points last between 1 and 4 shots.
That's right.
And these stats were sort of suggesting how often players that are under 12 and under 14 international standard miss within the first 4 shots. And so what I gather from the information and from what Ben is suggesting to me is that we're either disseminating the first 4 shot information incorrectly, or we're doing a really, really shitty job training it. And so that's sort of the long and the short of it.
Okay. So how do you translate then that, and how do you, like, what do you take from that, let's say, and how do you apply it to your training? It's like, what's one thing, okay, there's the stat, this is what happens, but does your training change because of that? And if it does,
that's a good
how?
Point. Yeah, that's a good point. When I was younger, Ben would have said something to me or gave me a stat like that, and I would have thrown out all of our annual plans out the window to be like, no, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So it's a really good thing you're bringing up where, in the past I would have changed everything. Now we don't. Now it's like there's a time in our training that we're going to get to that, and I have to ensure that I still have those statistics in mind or in back of mind for when we get to a segment of the training where it's realistic. Now, luckily, it being first 4 shot statistics, every day we're doing something that involves serving, returning, the server's first ball, the returner's first ball, right? So we can use that and to say, like, then it's up to you as a coach, I guess, to some extent of, like, how do you want to disseminate that information? And what I gather from those statistics is that kids are trying to be overly proactive within the first couple of shots. And my feeling, and I'm curious because you've seen a lot more high-level tennis than I have, I'm curious your thoughts where when a pro player hits a winner, if you're to ask them right after, were you trying to hit a winner? My feeling is 75% of the time, their answer would be no. And I could be wrong. But I just think, like, I think relating those statistics is like, well, let's build, let's be proactive, let's attack, but let's do all of those things safely. You know what I mean? Where it's like, if we look at, like, the number was, there's 3 errors to every 1 unforced error. Sorry, 3 errors to every 1 winner. It's like, well, how do we combat that? It's like, well, at some point we have to be less risky. But at some point we also have to be less risky without being a bitch. So it's less risky with really good margins, really good racket speed, really good use of your body, and all those things together, right? Like, we don't want to develop pushers, but we want to develop people that can play at a level that's sustainable over long periods of time. And a quick anecdotal story, I work with a kid, Peter Kaczynski from University of Western Michigan. He's around like 1,400 ATP in doubles. He's been close to a couple single points. The guy's got a massive game, like huge. And sometimes you watch him train, you're like, this guy should be top 100 in the world. But he, at least over the last couple of years, he's played at a level that is so not sustainable for long periods of time because there's so much redlining, and which I think is another thing that like Chris was saying, where it's like, well, how do you make a guy like Peter who can hit any shot from anywhere, anytime? How do you make him more aware of that 3-to-1 ratio? And how do you make him play in a way where it's like, Peter, we want you to hit winners. I don't want you to try to hit winners. And it makes sense for some people, and it doesn't make sense for other people. I think Pete's starting to get it a little bit now. But, I mean, I'm not sure if I really gave you an answer to your question, Boggy. But
no, that's because I don't think there is one. Like, it's more like a debate, but I was just curious how do you process that information? Because to me, and again, these are just thoughts. To me, so this stat is good, but I don't think we have to take it so close to our heart. I think it's the result. It's the result of kids of that level having, the right intention.
Could be, yeah.
Okay,
great point.
It's having. Sorry, I'm gonna change my position, man. But it's Let me think of a better way to say it. So, how I would interpret that is that you have to train more your intention. Okay, so let's say you serve, you get a ball that's like a little bit peeking inside the baseline. You have to be more proactive. Yeah, you're not just rallying it back. You have to attack it. Okay, in one way or another. Not necessarily attacking, like go for winner, like you said, but you have to attack it. And, for some of the kids, especially this age, it's tough, because maybe they were taught, like, to just rally, to stay in the point. So we're breaking a lot of that, a lot of those stereotypes for them, like for a player. And also we, by doing that, by saying, hey, you have to attack, of course, there's going to be more mistakes. So as long as there is good intention behind that, I think it's fine, and their game is gonna catch up, and evolve. So I think we have to hang, especially on this statistic. It's always too vague for me. Yes, the points are shorter, but again, why? Because again, okay, when pros receive a shorter ball, they're gonna go for it. They have very good discipline to know when to go for it, what target to go to. So that's a result, and for us it's just to make sure that we teach to those 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 14-year-olds, to make sure that there's good intention behind the shots, and for them to understand the geometry of the court, and so on and so forth.
And I think what you're suggesting is that if the goal is to create international standard players, that at some point you have to have some level of flexibility to allow your athlete to make mistakes.
100%.
If the decision is the correct one and the intention is the correct one, for sure. Part of the stuff that's interesting with this is those statistics, the 3-to-1 errors to winners, that doesn't change at a professional level. So that's the only thing that I would push back on a little bit is and okay, to break this down further, it's if you look at Novak, who I think is, as much as I hate to say it, because I'm a big Fed fan, but is probably the greatest player ever.
Yeah.
And you look at nothing that Novak doesn't have the biggest serve, biggest forehand, biggest whatever. Even Fed was Fed had a great forehand, but nothing that Fed does was really that big. And Rafa's got a big forehand, but outside of that, his serve's not big.
Yeah.
And then, it's really good, but not huge.
It's returnable. Then, it's not like Isner serve or Opelka serves.
And then if we bring in the big four, and I'm Scottish, so I have to. If we look at Murray, there's nothing. Murray's got a big enough serve, but his game I wouldn't say is huge. Yeah. So we look at these four guys that have been at the top of the sport for however long, but none of them have any. None of them you would say are do anything massive. It's not they just create unbelievable power. But okay, Rafa and Fed's forehand, we'll put that their forehands are world class.
Yeah.
But I still think sometimes as coaches and in programs we talk a lot about weapons and weapons and weapons and weapons and how do we make it bigger, and that sometimes goes hand in hand with being riskier. But it's well, look at Novak. Like, it doesn't look like he's risking stuff ever. So it's like, yeah, they've got to have the right intention. They got to play. They got to make the right decision at the right time.
Yeah.
But overall, can we make them more aware of just doing those things safely?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think if you match that with the personality of the kid, of your player, that's when you get like a real winner. Yeah. And do you play chess?
Not well, and only for money. Why do you ask?
Not well. And
no,
only
I don't.
fun.
I don't.
That's
Sorry,
not, I love that combination. But but listen, in chess, I don't play. I know a little bit about it, and I would, being a nerd that I am, like if I like something, I start like really investigate. So hey, how do I get better at? So I would listen to some videos, and so anyway, in chess, there is a move, a certain move that's called like an in-between moves. You know, so they don't necessarily change anything on the board. It's not like to create certain tactic or anything. It's more like I'm just gonna do this just to see what my opponent does.
Yeah.
So again, it doesn't put me in danger. I'm not putting, I'm not forcing anything. It's just like, hey, what do you do? So I think that's what I'm personally like fascinated to bring that in tennis, and I think that's what a lot of juniors, again, are lacking, is those in-between shots. Kind of like understanding, and you talked about it with Zach on your podcast, The Gray Zone. Subscribe, everybody, please, if you haven't already, by the finish, so by the end of this show. But it's understanding, like, where are you in the point? And it's okay sometimes if you don't know what to do, for example, or if it's not the right time, to just, hit it deep, hit it to their weakness, and see what they're doing. What are they going to do? And then do it, like, again, maybe for one more, and maybe for one more. So, and that's okay. It's not like because you're a bad player or because, it's okay. Just see what they're coming up with.
Yeah.
So I think it's also important.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But I think, and last thing I'll say on that is, Christophe Lambert, I think is his name, who's now with Bianca, and he led New Zealand Tennis's high-performance program for a while. He spent a little bit of time in my coach, too, and he was talking about progressive tennis, and he was like, progressive tennis, you just got to think of it as a tool, right? And I'm a big progressive tennis advocate, for sure, but he's like, it's a tool. Like, even if somebody's on a real ball, there's lots of tools that you can use. Yeah. And I think that stuck with me because it's like, all these statistics, they're just a tool. Yeah, right. That's right. You can, like, I think what's really interesting is I think Ben, who sent me the stats, probably interprets them differently than I do. Yeah. I feel like you and I will probably interpret them differently, and not in a bad way. Yeah. But it's like, how do you use data to help your athletes based on what you think is going to be the most beneficial for your athletes? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, 100%. And that's that's what's going to determine, the outcome. And that's basically, you have to be careful. I guess what I'm trying to say here is you have to be careful with the stats. Because if you interpret it wrong, which most of the time, I think that's what happens is like there's more harm than benefit to the player. So it just like you have to understand the game, obviously in general, and trying to see, okay, if I do this change to my training, to my players' training, like how is that gonna affect? Is it really gonna accomplish what I'm trying to do? Like, is this the right way? Is this going to get him closer to that level? And I think that's I'm simplifying, but... no, I think it's, well said, man. Well said, for sure.
Yeah. Al, 1 hour, 44 minutes. Holy crap.
2 more hours to go.
So listen, I just want to kind of wrap it up a little bit, but I want to wrap it up with some words that you can maybe say to... sorry, hold on. Oh, my God. Actually, that joke that for 2 hours, maybe it's true. 2 hours, maybe. But so look, I posted a story on Instagram saying, hey, I'm going live with Al, just like 2 minutes before, because I completely forgot to post it like beforehand. And I said, hey, if you have any questions, please drop some
And people
questions.
are like, who's Al?
So I'll read all of them. Like, usually I try to put some questions inside the show, and like sometimes I make a Q&A section. But anyway, so I'm just gonna read all of them.
Sure.
And hold on, let me refresh.
We'll fire through them.
Yeah. So some questions and some statements.
Great.
Junior rankings. I love this one. It's like because I read a little bit as you were saying some other stuff. So junior rankings is stressing me out. Nationals have so many points. Not fair. Just like that. Some.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Dude,
like,
you're right.
Yeah.
It is stressful. And just real quick on that too is like, I'm not sure the point system in Ontario at least rewards low-level events enough. Where like one of the issues we have right now is like, if you only play 2-star transitions, can you really win enough 2-star transitions to get direct into a 4-star event? I don't know. And then it's like, I'd even say the same to some extent with 3-star. And like, of course you can, but it's really tricky to make a 4-star event if everybody playing the 4-star event is doing well in the 4-star event, or if they're doing really well in a 5-star event. Then they never have to play lower tournaments than 3-star to get in, which is sort of like, I get it. There has to be a way that rankings are weighted, but to some extent, it devalues competing a lot.
But can you win enough 2-star events to get into 3-star events?
Yes.
So I think it's a good progression in that way.
Yeah.
Because
but this goes back to again though, like,
yeah.
Can you get into enough tournaments to do that?
Yeah, that's true.
Let's
that's
say
true.
if there were
that's
enough
true.
tournaments.
That's true.
Great.
Okay, that's a good point then. Okay, that's a good point. Because I always say to my players, okay, start with a rookie, win a rookie.
Yep.
Once you win a rookie,
yep.
Okay, you can go into transition. Win transition after. Yeah. And then go back and forth, and then like your ratios and all that stuff. But
last thing on that too,
yeah.
for whoever asked that question, the stress is a privilege. The pressure that you feel competing, that's a privilege. Like, so, embrace it. Embrace it. It's going to make you better.
100%. A question from Peter Kuczynski.
Oh, Peter.
How can Al improve Peter's forehand?
Find a new coach, Pete. That's how.
And then a question from Ryan Chow, who was also brought up in this podcast. Al is up this early?
Yeah, I haven't slept yet. I'm going to Vegas tomorrow, so I thought I'd start the party early. You know what I mean?
That's it.
Yeah.
And one more question. One thing Tennis Canada should do to attract more players to competitive programming?
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure if it's Tennis Canada's role or responsibility to attract more players to competitive programming. Well, I guess it would be in some sense. So I'll start with anything at all.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know if they currently are involved in doing that, but I mean, this is the biggest cop-out, but it starts with facilities. And the last thing I'll say on this, because this has come up a little bit, but I personally want to issue a challenge to every club owner or club head in Ontario, where like I understand we all have to do things to make money. I get that, but if you have a mission statement or a value statement on your website that says part of your goal is the long-term growth or development of tennis, and you don't host junior tournaments, I call bullshit on you.
Yeah.
So like really, it's like
100%.
Don't put that on your website unless you're willing to do something about the massive problem we have in Ontario, which is there are not enough people that are hosting events for competition. Yeah. And if you don't do anything about that, then you're part of the problem. Bam!
Yeah. Bam. And there is enough facilities for that, because like you could argue like the couple like 10 years ago, like, oh, maybe we don't have, like, listen, we have enough facilities, we have enough courts, and there's more courts on the way, and 100%. And no, that's listen, we had a blast.
Thanks, Boggy D.
Listen, thank you so much. Like, I was not expecting, this whole, interview business for the first 50 minutes we did. And, like,
but I will say, I mean, your story is really unique, man. So I'm not trying to make this go longer than it should. But if I were you, like, one time it'd be really neat for you to actually lay out your whole story, because it's really, really interesting, and I think it is a story of perseverance. And I don't say that because you're a buddy, but I really I believe that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I listen. I thank you so much for saying this, and I was actually thinking about it. Like me and my girlfriend actually suggested. Like,
okay, thanks, Bogdan. Appreciate it, man.
My girlfriend actually suggested it. Like, hey, why don't I interview you? You know, like, and just make it, because she was saying like the stuff that you were saying is pretty interesting, and so maybe maybe I'll get invited to some other podcast. I don't know. maybe who knows? Anyway, Al, listen, it's been a blast, and again, I cannot thank you enough for finding this much time and to talk to us, and there's been a ton of value that you've given us through your experience and wisdom. So that's so much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Oh, happy to, man. It's I appreciate you, Boggy, as always, and keep doing what you're doing, man. This is great, and feel free to delete all this because I'm sure it's all useless, but it was fun catching up regardless, man.
Yeah, man. Cheers.
Okay, take it easy.